Hi, I'm Matthew Borey, Chief Intelligence Officer with Osprey Flight Solutions, and today I'll be presenting our China-Taiwan situation update. It's the 5th of August, and we've been monitoring the situation between China and Taiwan, especially along the Taiwan Strait, in the past week. We've issued a number of alerts to our clients during that time, and we're consistently monitoring the current activity and adjusting our understanding of the situation accordingly. We'll be publishing situation updates like this through our alerts should they be necessary. And the key reason why we're having this webinar today is to discuss some of the activity that occurred yesterday on the 4th of August. From 0556 to 0800 UTC on the 4th of August, China reportedly launched over 10 ballistic missiles from mainland China areas near the Taiwan Strait into water areas off of Taiwan. The Chinese military has confirmed that it conducted these missile launches as part of military drills, which are set to run through the 7th of August. And there were NOTAMs that were issued by China as well as Taiwan for areas off of Taiwan that military drills were expected to occur in. However, a number of the ballistic missiles launched by China did not have adequate NOTAMs covering the launch areas in mainland China or the trajectories of the flight path of those ballistic missiles. This is highly concerning as there's several ATS routes used by civil aviation operators in Shanghai as well as Taipei near the Taiwan Strait. Multiple safety of flight concerns emanate from a situation where a missile malfunctions during the boost, mid-course, or terminal phases of flight. This could lead to an event such as the missile flying an unplanned trajectory or altitude profile, and any aircraft that could be overflying or underflying that malfunction have the potential to be exposed to mid-air collision, route diversion, and or debris splashdown issues. Additional ballistic missile launches from mainland China into the waters off Taiwan through the 7th of August are assessed to be a realistic possibility. So what we're going to do now is actually start to visualize what we saw yesterday. You'll see on this slide of the situation update, we have several dots on mainland China that are in green on the map. That is where the ballistic missiles were launched from. We have triangles in the water areas around Taiwan. That is where the ballistic missiles impacted. Those triangles are in containers that are covered by dashed lines. Those containers with the dashed outline is where the airspace closures are in effect via NOTAM for the Chinese military drills. The separate standalone dashed lines, however, show the trajectory or flight path of those ballistic missiles. As you can see, the dots and the dashed line depicting the flight paths are not in areas covered by NOTAMs for the military drills. And in white, the lines that you can see on the map are depicting the ATS routes where civil aviation operators conduct flights in both for Shanghai as well as for Taipei. From this depiction by Osprey, which was generated after visualizing data provided by the Japanese Ministry of Defense, we can see the number of civil aviation ATS routes that could have been exposed to this hazardous activity caused by Chinese ballistic missile launches without appropriate NOTAMs. And we're closely monitoring for additional activity like this, which could happen in the days ahead. The white areas with the dashes around them off of Taiwan in the water areas, as I've said before, the military drills are expected to run through the 7th of August. So China at any time in the next few days could conduct similar ballistic missile launches with impacts in these areas covered by NOTAMs, but launch areas and flight trajectories and profiles not covered by NOTAMs. So I think what we're going to do now is take a step back and look at the situation between China and Taiwan. But instead of looking at what's happened in the last 24 or 48 hours, we're going to take a look back to the start of 2020 and visualize conventional military activity by China and Taiwan since the start of 2020. Why is this important? What we're looking at here is in red on the chart is Chinese military activity on a monthly basis as tracked by Osprey Flight Solutions, artificial intelligence and machine learning technology within the Osprey system. In our Explore module, you can visualize that data, and you can see that in the last 5 months, Chinese military activity has remained pretty steady in comparison to the start of 2020, when there was a relative lull in Chinese military activity that coincided with the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. However, the activity we've seen in the last 5 months, while it's elevated over the start of 2022, it is consistent with historical averages from the last couple years. And what we've also noticed is that the Chinese military follows a yearly training cycle that typically leads to increases in activity in the late summer and or early fall. So in both 2020 and 2021, in the September timeframe, we saw the biggest amounts of activities in either of those years taking place. What Osprey expects to see in the next few months is Chinese military activity to increase in August, in September, and potentially in October. However, Osprey currently assesses that activity that may increase in August through October will be part of historical rhythms associated with the yearly training cycle and not necessarily a prelude to further provocations around Taiwan or military drills that are outside the norm of historically observed activity. So while we may see an increase in overall activity in the months ahead, it's likely part of the yearly training cycle, and we'd have to see a significant increase in that activity well beyond what was seen in 2021 or 2020 to get any indication that something abnormal is taking place with Chinese military activity in aggregate, especially near the Taiwan Strait. One of the next things we're going to take a look at is the air defense identification zone that Taiwan has established. Taiwan, like several other countries in the Asia-Pacific region, to include China, South Korea, Japan, have established air defense identification zones. Now, air defense identification zones are different than flight information regions and should not be confused as such. Both China and Taiwan routinely issue NOTAMs for their respective flight information regions, or FIRs, or FIRs. Within an ADIZ, typically countries establish these for national security purposes. And their intent is to have aircraft that operate within that area report their location to relevant authorities, respond to air traffic control directives, and adhere to radio contact with any military aircraft that may be scrambled in response. And so the key here is that the Taiwanese ADIZ overlaps into Chinese airspace. And so China continues to conduct daily flight operations within the southwest portion of the Taiwanese ADIZ. Now, the Taiwanese ADIZ is not governed by any international bodies or regulated for enforcement. And so it is their own national security policy that has initiated this ADIZ for national security purposes. And China is not obligated to adhere to the ADIZ that Taiwan has established. And so because of this, we're seeing regular interactions between Chinese military aircraft not following the ADIZ policy set forth by the Taiwanese military and government. And in response, Taiwanese military aviation assets being scrambled to the locations where Chinese aircraft are. This is not a new phenomenon. It's been happening on a near daily basis since April, and in 2021 in particular, there was a significant number of Chinese incursions into the Taiwanese ATIS as there was in 2020. And so at this point, we're not seeing levels in 2022 being as high as 2021. Part of that is due to the fact that the Winter Olympics in Beijing led to the first 3 months of 2022 having a relatively low amount of ATIS incursions by the Chinese Air Force. However, during the last few days, especially during the time frame when the U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives visited Taipei, Taiwan, on the 2nd and 3rd, and then on the 4th of August, we saw 70 total Chinese aircraft enter the southwest portion of the Taiwanese ATIS. This is a large number of aircraft. However, it is not an unprecedented number in a 72-hour period. There have been 3-day periods where similar, high numbers of aircraft have entered into the southwest portion of the ATIS. And we are expecting to see continued ATIS incursions by the Chinese on a multiple time per week basis through the remainder of 2022. And we will be monitoring very closely to see if these 20 plus aircraft incursions in the days ahead continue, as that could be an indicator for escalation in the current situation. What we're seeing right now is the Chinese responded with a large incursion of aircraft over a 3-day period due to a politically sensitive event. They've also responded with the military drills and ballistic missile launches that we've talked about already. We're expecting to see some more activity in the days ahead. And then after that time period passes and we get into next week and the weeks after, we'll start to reevaluate where the Chinese military is headed for the remainder of the year in their training cycle, again, after completion of drills in response to a politically sensitive event. So there are several reasons why the tensions between China and Taiwan and also the United States have increased. Essentially, Chinese officials have stated that all military activity in the Taiwan Strait is to safeguard the national sovereignty and territorial integrity of the People's Republic of China. The U.S. Department of State, in response, has urged Beijing to cease its military, diplomatic, and economic pressure against Taiwan, and it is said that it's going to deepen ties with Taiwan. China has denounced that statement and is also pushing back against further U.S. military support or defense sales to Taiwan, which have also exacerbated tensions. The U.S. has said that any defense sales or military support is to help Taiwan maintain a self-defense capability. And although the United States and Taiwan don't have a formal diplomatic set of ties, there are heightened tensions at the moment with both parties and China. The U.S. has also been conducting freedom of navigation operations with aircraft and naval vessels on about a monthly basis through the Taiwan Strait or in areas near the Taiwan Strait. And that's been a regular occurrence over the last few years. Now, we're not necessarily seeing an increase in those missions in 2022 or even in the second half of 2021. However, if those types of FONOPs in the months ahead in the remainder of 2022 continue to take place or increase, and if the U.S. continues defense support and arms sales to Taiwan, which it is expected to, then we're likely going to see China take further provocative actions around the Taiwan Strait in the coming months, to include military drills. And those drills could again include ballistic missile launches. Those ballistic missile launches may take place without appropriate NOTAMs for the full portion of the activity. So some of the things that we'll discuss now are indicators of escalation and de-escalation. So in the days ahead, but also in the weeks and months, any additional ballistic missile launches from mainland China into the waters off Taiwan, especially those without NOTAMs, will highlight that we're headed for escalation. Japanese military reporting from the 4th of August indicated that at least one of the ballistic missiles that was launched by China may have actually flew over the island of Taiwan, and not just impacted in the waters near it. That is another form of escalation associated with ballistic missile launches that we'll be watching very closely. Any significant increase in Chinese military air activity within the Taiwanese ADAs, especially near the median line, needs to be monitored. At present, again, 2022 is trending to be a lower total ADAs incursions compared to 2020 or 2021. However, there's still several months of the year left, and the last 3 days, again, have seen an increase in this activity, though the question is, will that be sustained or not? Widespread deployment of inter-theater Chinese military forces to areas of mainland China along the Taiwan Strait would be another form of provocation that the Chinese may elect to take, and they could do this as part of military drills in the late summer or early fall. This would be concerning because it could indicate that China is mobilizing for some form of operation that is not standard military training, and that is something that Osprey will be looking for very closely. And then on the flip side, large-scale Taiwanese armed forces drills and a dramatic increase in U.S. military air and naval FONOPs near the Taiwan Strait. Should those types of activities occur in the weeks or months ahead, that would indicate escalation towards a potential conflict scenario, though there's no indication right now that Taiwan is planning to conduct drills outside of its own yearly training cycle, and Osprey currently expects U.S. military air and naval FONOPs to remain at their current frequency interval of about once per month. Now, potential indicators of de-escalation would be a Chinese willingness to engage in bilateral talks with the U.S., Japanese, and or South Korean political or defense officials. China has shown some eagerness to conduct certain types of talks, typically economically focused. It's been a situation where we've seen changes in the government leadership in both South Korea and Japan. And so there may be openings for dialogue because of that. And what we'll be watching for is the potential for China to engage with other parties in the region diplomatically or through defense exchanges. And those would be a positive step towards de-escalating the situation vis-a-vis Taiwan. If the Chinese were to scale down their yearly military training cycle in August, September, and October to activity below levels observed in 2021, that would indicate de-escalation. So at present, we do expect to see activity similar to 2020 or 2021, though if it is below, that'll be a positive sign and indicate that the Taiwan Strait is cooling off potentially. So we'll be keeping our eye on that very closely. A decrease in U.S. military air and naval FONOPs near the Taiwan Strait during the remainder of 2022. As I discussed previously, the U.S. is conducting about one per month. If they were to drop down to once every couple months or even once a quarter, that would indicate a de-escalation in potentially some of the military tensions between the U.S. and China directly. And then lastly, were Taiwanese military and government officials to pursue a slowdown in defense spending, and if there were a corresponding drop or slowdown in planned U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, that could also indicate a de-escalation. However, there are no indications at present that Taiwanese military spending is going to be on a downward trend, and U.S. arms sales to Taiwan are expected to continue in a self-defense capacity based on all the recent statements that have been made by key Biden administration officials. So we'll be keeping an eye on this for a sign of de-escalation, but there's no indications at present that that is taking place on the last bullet there. So we're going to wrap it up here with some key takeaways. One of the key takeaways are that rerouting of civil aviation over Eastern for Shanghai, as well as for Taipei, remains a credible long-term scenario. The NOTAMs that have been put in place for the Chinese military exercises in the waters off Taiwan have already done this at present, and similar activity could very well occur at short notice. We expect further military drills to be undertaken by China and Taiwan, but we also expect that those are going to be part of a yearly training cycle conducted by both. The size and duration of those drills, though, could be an indicator of whether or not we're seeing an escalation in activity or potentially a de-escalation in activity. Ballistic missile launches from mainland China into waters off Taiwan in the weeks ahead is assessed to be a realistic possibility. And again, that was really the impetus for today's webinar, and is something that, again, our team will be watching very, very closely and issuing alerts on should they occur in the near term. Short notice or temporary and partial closures of airspace in China and or Taiwan may be announced with little warning. That again relates back to the rerouting of flights, the military drills, and any potential ballistic missile launches. The Chinese military is expected to continue conducting multiple flights per week in the Taiwanese ATIS through the remainder of 2022. We advise our clients to remain abreast of ATIS policies in the region affecting specific areas near the Taiwan Strait, East China Sea, and Yellow Sea. And then lastly, there is a possibility that NOTAMs, circulars, publication restrictions, prohibitions, and or bulletins may be issued at short notice by leading civil aviation governing bodies. This could be from the US FAA, Transport Canada, the German LBA, the French DGAC, or the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. Osprey will be monitoring for any type of aeronautical information being released by any of those leading civil aviation governing bodies related to China or Taiwan. If they do get issued, say a NOTAM is issued by one of those leading governing bodies about the China-Taiwan situation, Osprey will alert our clients and will provide analysis of how that regulatory information may affect civil aviation flight operations in the area. As always, continue to use the Osprey online portal to access our alert archive. You can simply search for China or Taiwan and pull up any of the alerts we've issued over the years. We have issued a number of alerts in the last year about military, air, and naval activity, as well as armed forces drills near China and Taiwan. So for a historical perspective, our alert archive is a great resource. We have up-to-date risk assessments for the airspace over the Taiwan Strait and the East China Sea, as well as the South China Sea. You can simply go to the reports page on the Osprey online platform, and when you click on the airspace icon, you'll be able to access those airspace risk area reports, in this case specifically for the Taiwan Strait, instantaneously. It will be populated with the most up-to-date data that's been collected by Osprey, and our risk scoring for the Taiwan Strait is under constant review at present. For our clients that have Explore, you can very easily create the graphics that I used in today's presentation. Simply go to the Explore platform, select countries, select Taiwan, select China, and then select the incident types you'd like to review and the date time frame you'd like to see. and you can dive into the incident data on activity in China and Taiwan, specifically for conventional military activity, dating all the way back to June of 2018. So there's over 4 years of very robust incident data that you can utilize as part of your risk assessment processes. And then lastly, for our clients with flights or Pulse, please make use of both of those tools within the Osprey platform. If you have any flights that are in the Asia Pacific region near the Taiwan Strait to Taiwan, or in the Chinese mainland areas near the Taiwan Strait as well. In the flights module, you can upload any of your flight plans and instantaneously risk assess that flight route, and then rerun that risk assessment anytime you need to before that flight takes place. And for our Pulse clients, your flights that are touching any of the risk areas that we've discussed, or going to any of the countries that we've discussed, i.e. China or Taiwan, your flights will automatically be risk assessed. We'll be monitoring those airspace risk areas. If we issue any alerts related to China or Taiwan and the issues that have been discussed in today's webinar, those flights that are in the Pulse module will be automatically tagged with that alert. And if we do end up raising the risk score, for example, for the Taiwanese airspace risk area in the Taiwan Strait, any flights that you have in the Pulse module that are impacted by that risk score change will get an automatic change notification telling you that the risk level for that area has gone up, and it will tell you exactly what flights are impacted. So again, utilizing the Osprey system in our alerts, reports, explore, flights, and Pulse modules will be very useful as this situation continues to evolve between China and Taiwan. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's webinar. Please reach out to your Osprey account manager with any questions. And as always, please stay safe.